You were not created to live in fear. You were not placed on this earth to merely survive, to scrape by, or to live dependent on unstable systems. You are here to walk in divine abundance, to live fully, to thrive, because God is your source, not the economy. The moment we recognize that God is our true source, not the economy, everything changes. It is a shift in consciousness that redefines how we view money, provision, success, and security. For most people, their sense of well-being is tied to the condition of their job, their investments, or the state of the world economy. But this kind of mindset is built on shifting sand. Economies rise and fall, companies downsize, markets crash, even the most stable industries can be disrupted. If your peace and sense of security are tied to these unstable systems, you will live in a constant state of anxiety. But when you realize that God, not the economy, is your provider, you tap into a supply chain that never breaks down, never weakens, and never runs out. The economy is merely a system through which provision may flow. It is a channel. It is not the source. Your job, your business, your clients, your paycheck, these are all channels. But channels can dry up, be redirected, or change form. When one channel closes, God opens another. He's not limited to what you see in front of you. He's not scrambling when the economy shifts. He doesn't need the stock market to align for you to be blessed. His supply is not governed by the world's financial systems. His provision comes from a higher dimension, a spiritual economy that is unaffected by human conditions. And when you understand this truth, fear loses its grip on you. Most people look at their circumstances and say, I can't make it because the economy is down, or business is slow, inflation is up, and everything is getting worse. That kind of thinking places all your hope in an external system. It turns the economy into an idol, something you believe has power over your destiny. But the truth is, no man-made system has the authority to determine your outcome when you are aligned with God's promises. Scripture teaches, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That means your needs are met, not because of what's happening in the natural, but because of who you are connected to in the spiritual. Think of the Israelites in the wilderness. There were no banks, no crops, no visible economy, yet every day they received fresh manna from heaven. Water flowed from a rock. They lacked nothing. Why? Because their source wasn't the land, it was the Lord. When they trusted Him, they were sustained in the most unlikely circumstances. And the same is true for you today. You don't need ideal market conditions to prosper. You need faith in the God who provides in and out of season. Now, this does not mean that you sit back and do nothing. It means you stop depending solely on the work of your hands and start trusting in the favor of God. It means you act in faith with the understanding that your efforts are blessed by an invisible hand that guides and multiplies. God uses natural means to bring about supernatural outcomes. He can cause your resume to stand out. He can bring clients to your doorstep. He can put your name in rooms you've never entered. But it starts with the belief that He is the source behind it all. When you see God as your source, your anxiety over money begins to dissolve. You don't panic when bills show up. You don't spiral when business slows down. Instead, you go to the one who provides. You pray with confidence. You expect with faith. You move with boldness, because you know that your future isn't limited by human systems. It's anchored in divine supply. That awareness becomes your strength. It becomes your peace. It becomes your strategy. There's a danger in placing your trust in economic systems. These systems are built by men. They are controlled by policies, corporations, markets, and agendas that shift constantly. And when you tie your identity or your peace to them, you become subject to every wave that moves through the financial world. One headline can destroy your confidence. One downturn can steal your hope. That is not how you were designed to live. You were created to live by faith, not fear. You were created to live by promises, not prediction. God's economy is not reactive. It doesn't depend on GDP, inflation, or currency values. He fed thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish. He brought water out of dry places. He used ravens to feed prophets. These are not metaphors. They are demonstrations of how God's provision is not tied to the world's systems. And if He could do it then, He can do it now. The channel may look different, but the source remains unchanged. And once you embrace this truth, you'll stop trying to force open doors God has already replaced. You'll stop worrying about how it will happen and start trusting in who makes it happen. When your mindset shifts from "I need the economy to improve" to "I trust God to provide," you begin to operate in spiritual power. You become unshaken by the news. You become immune to panic, not because you're disconnected from reality, but because you're grounded in a greater reality, the truth of divine provision. The peace that comes from knowing God is your source is not fragile. It doesn't depend on external confirmation. It lives deep within you and flows out as confidence, clarity, and calm. This way of thinking isn't just spiritual, it's practical. It helps you make wiser decisions because you're not acting from fear. It helps you spot opportunities others miss because you're guided by the Spirit, not trends. It allows you to be generous even when others are hoarding, and that generosity opens new channels of provision because you've proven that money doesn't control you. You control it through faith. Don't be discouraged by what you see in the economy. Don't let statistics or forecasts define your future. The news may be real, but it is not the truth. Truth is higher than fact. And the truth is, you are connected to an unlimited source. You are not forgotten. You are not helpless. You are not dependent on a broken system. You are a child of God, and your supply comes from heaven. That truth will guide you, sustain you, and elevate you, regardless of what happens in the world around you. Provision begins in the spiritual realm long before it becomes visible in the physical. Everything that exists in the material world was first conceived in thought, intention, or unseen potential. Before a building is constructed, there is a blueprint. Before a harvest is gathered, seeds are planted. In the same way, your abundance, your opportunities, and your financial breakthroughs begin as spiritual realities. To manifest them, you must first align with the unseen truth that God is your source and that His supply is limitless. People often look at their circumstances and say, "I don't see any way out," or "there's no opportunity in sight," but they fail to understand that the most powerful things are not seen with the eyes. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Just because you don't see the door doesn't mean it isn't opening. Just because you can't trace how the provision will come doesn't mean it isn't already being prepared. God works behind the scenes, in realms you cannot touch, arranging the pieces, aligning the timing, and making ways in the wilderness. The spiritual realm operates by different laws than the natural world. In the physical, people rely on effort, hustle, logic, and numbers. But in the spiritual, things move by belief, spoken word, alignment, and obedience. The key to unlocking divine provision isn't striving harder, it's believing deeper. When you believe that provision has already been made, when you act as though it's already in motion, you draw it into your experience. You are not waiting for something to be created. You are simply calling into manifestation what already exists in the unseen. This is why it's essential to train your spiritual senses. You must become more attuned to faith than to fear, more aligned with divine promises than worldly predictions. The economy may say you are headed for loss, but God says He is your provider. Your job may say you've reached the cap, but God says He opens doors no man can shut. There are blessings that exist in the spirit realm with your name on them, but you must rise in consciousness to receive them. You cannot walk in abundance while thinking in lack. You cannot receive from the Spirit while living anchored only in the material. When provision is spiritual first, your prayers become powerful. You're not begging for scraps or asking for barely enough. You're accessing a treasury that already exists. You're not hoping that something might happen. You're declaring that it will. This is the difference between worldly wishing and spiritual knowing. Wishing doubts, knowing acts. And when you move in knowing, heaven responds. God honors faith. He honors those who dare to believe that what He has promised is already there. Provision is also released through divine ideas. God doesn't always drop money from the sky, but He will drop an idea into your spirit that leads to abundance. He will give you insight, wisdom, or strategy that positions you for increase. But again, it starts in the unseen. That moment of inspiration, that nudge to try something new, that inner prompting to reach out or start again, that is how provision begins. It doesn't always look like a financial breakthrough at first. Sometimes it looks like clarity, or courage, or a decision. And when you act on what you receive spiritually, you unlock the flow of supply in the natural. People miss provision because they only look for the material. They pray for money, but ignore the inspired idea that would generate it. They ask for favor, but reject the prompting that requires faith. They want immediate visible results, but God often works by planting seeds. Those seeds must be received, nurtured, and acted upon. The harvest doesn't come before the seed. It comes after belief and action have partnered with divine timing. This is why gratitude plays such a crucial role. When you thank God in advance, you're acknowledging that the answer already exists. You're aligning with the reality that supply is not created when you pray, it is accessed when you believe. Gratitude tunes your heart to the frequency of faith. It tells your spirit, it is done, even when your eyes see nothing. And when you live from that place of trust, provision begins to flow more freely. There's also a supernatural timing to provision. You may think something is late, but in the spirit it is right on time. Delay does not mean denial. Just because you haven't seen the answer yet, doesn't mean it's not on its way. What's being worked out in the unseen is often far greater than what you originally expected. God's timing is perfect. He sees what you can't. He knows what's best for you. And sometimes the wait is a form of protection. Sometimes it's preparation. Sometimes it's positioning. But it is never a sign of abandonment. Living from the awareness that provision begins in the spiritual changes, how you pray, how you move, and how you expect. You begin to speak life into your finances. You stop rehearsing defeat. You stop aligning your language with lack. Instead, you declare truth. All my needs are met. Provision is flowing to me. Divine opportunities are locating me now. These are not empty affirmations. They are spiritual activations. Your words carry power, and when they align with faith, they unlock heaven's resources. Provision is not about striving harder. It's about believing deeper. It's about recognizing that you are a spiritual being with access to divine inheritance. When you connect with that truth, the world around you begins to shift. Resources come. People show up. Breakthroughs happen. But it all starts within. Your internal world must be aligned with abundance before the external world reflects it. You don't receive what you want. You receive what you believe. You receive what you expect. You receive what you are spiritually aligned with. You may not see it yet. You may not know how it will come, but don't let that stop you. Keep your heart open. Keep your spirit expectant. Keep declaring truth. Keep sowing in faith. Keep thanking God in advance. Because in the spiritual realm, your provision is already established. It's not a question of if, it's only a question of when. And when you understand that provision is spiritual first, you stop chasing money and start attracting it. You stop striving and start receiving. You stop fearing and start flowing. Provision exists. It's already assigned. It's already waiting. And your faith is the bridge that brings it from the unseen into the seen. So rise in belief, walk in expectation, and know that what's being prepared in the spirit will soon manifest in your life. The spirit of lack is not simply the absence of money or material possessions. It is a deeply rooted mindset that distorts how we perceive ourselves, our circumstances, and God's provision. It whispers lies, that there is never enough, that you are not worthy of abundance, and that your needs will always outweigh your supply. It conditions you to believe that struggle is permanent, that wealth is reserved for others, and that you must hustle, strive, and compete for scraps. But this spirit is not from God. It is rooted in fear, and fear is the enemy of faith. To walk in divine abundance, you must first confront and break the spirit of lack that seeks to keep you small, insecure, and doubtful. Lack is not just physical, it begins in the mind. A person can have money and still be ruled by lack. They can live in a big house, drive a luxury car, and still constantly fear that it could all disappear. That fear leads to hoarding, anxiety, stinginess, and suspicion. True abundance isn't measured by possessions, it's measured by the freedom in your spirit and the peace in your heart. When you believe that God is your source and that His supply is infinite, the fear of lack begins to lose its grip on you. You stop living in panic and start living in trust. The world trains people to think in terms of scarcity. You hear it in conversations. There's not enough to go around. Times are tough. Money doesn't grow on trees. These phrases may sound harmless, but they plant seeds of limitation in the mind. Over time, those seeds grow into beliefs, and those beliefs shape behavior. You begin to say no to opportunities because they feel too risky. You hold back from giving because you fear you won't have enough left. You settle for less because you don't believe more is possible. But the truth is, lack is not your portion. You were created in the image of an abundant God who owns all resources, knows no limitation, and delights in blessing His children. To break the spirit of lack, you must begin by identifying where it lives in your life. Is it in your thoughts, your words, your actions? Every time you say, "I can't afford that," or "I'll never get ahead," you are reinforcing the chains of limitation. The first step in breaking them is to challenge the internal dialogue that supports them. Instead of saying, "I can't," begin to say, "God can." Instead of saying, "There's not enough," declare, "There's always more where that came from." These are not empty affirmations. They are spiritual corrections. They rewire your thinking to align with divine truth. Lack often masquerades as humility. People are taught that to desire more is greedy, or that living with little is noble. But there is nothing holy about poverty when it's driven by fear. God never intended for His children to barely survive. He promised abundance, not for the sake of vanity, but for the sake of purpose. When you are blessed, you can be a blessing. When you are free from financial fear, you can serve more, give more, and live more fully. Breaking the spirit of lack isn't about chasing wealth. It's about removing the chains that keep you from your God-ordained freedom. Another powerful way to break the spirit of lack is through giving. It may seem counterintuitive, but giving is one of the most spiritual acts of defiance against fear. Lack says, "Hold tightly." Faith says, "Release it and trust God to multiply it." When you give, you declare that money does not control you. You prove to yourself and to God that your heart is not bound by materialism. Giving loosens the grip of fear and opens the flow of provision. It doesn't have to be large. It just has to be obedient. Whether it's money, time, encouragement, or resources, giving shifts your mindset from scarcity to abundance. Lack is also broken by renewing your sense of identity. If you see yourself as someone who is always struggling, always behind, always at the bottom, you will unconsciously act in ways that confirm that image. But when you begin to see yourself as a beloved child of God, highly favored, abundantly supplied, and walking in divine alignment, your choices begin to change. You stop settling for less. You stop accepting defeat. You start expecting good. Your posture shifts from desperation to confidence, not arrogance but assurance in the one who provides. Fear of lack creates tension. It makes you anxious, impatient, and reactive. You make decisions out of fear instead of faith. You chase things that aren't for you, because you believe you must grab what you can while it lasts. But when you're led by trust, you operate differently. You pause, you pray, you wait. You allow things to unfold with peace, because you know your supply doesn't depend on chance. It depends on a faithful God who sees your needs before you even speak them. This transformation is not instant. Breaking the spirit of lack is a daily practice. It's about renewing your mind constantly with truth. It's about speaking life when lack tries to scream. It's about standing in faith when circumstances look empty. And yes, it's about rejecting the world's narrative of scarcity and choosing to live by the laws of divine provision. Every time you say there is more than enough, you strike a blow against lack. Every time you choose to give instead of hoard, you disrupt the spirit of fear. Every time you trust God instead of obsessing over numbers, you expand your capacity to receive. These daily acts of faith compound over time, reshaping your reality from the inside out. It's important to understand that breaking the spirit of lack is not just about material outcomes. It's about stepping into a deeper relationship with God as provider. When you truly know that He is the one who meets your needs, provides your answers, and multiplies your resources, your heart becomes settled. You move with peace, not panic. You walk with purpose, not pressure. You give without fear and you receive without guilt. The abundance of God is not reserved for a special few. It is available to all who align with Him in faith. But to experience it fully, the spirit of lack must be cast out. It cannot coexist with faith. It cannot thrive where truth is spoken. And it cannot remain in a heart that is fully surrendered to the belief that God is more than enough. So, every day, choose to believe in divine sufficiency. Speak words that build your faith, not feed your fear. Give even when it stretches you. Think expansively. Act boldly. Expect favor. And know that lack is not your identity. You are not defined by your past, your paycheck, or your possessions. You are defined by your connection to an infinite source who delights in your well-being, cares for your needs, and is fully capable of exceeding your expectations. When the spirit of lack is broken, you don't just gain money, you gain freedom. You gain peace. You gain the ability to live with open hands and an open heart, fully trusting in the one who never runs out. Giving is not merely a financial transaction. It is a spiritual principle that activates divine multiplication. The world teaches us to hold tightly, to preserve what we have, and to measure every act of generosity against our own lack or perceived limitations. But in the realm of the Spirit, the opposite is true. When you give freely, especially when it stretches your faith, you open the floodgates of divine provision. Giving is not losing, it is planting, and every seed sown in faith returns multiplied, not always in the form you expect, but always in the way you need. Many people misunderstand giving. They think of it only in terms of money, and often feel fear rise up when the topic is mentioned. But giving is far more than finances. It's a posture of the heart. It is the willingness to release what you have, trusting that God will provide what you need. Whether it's time, energy, love, encouragement, service, or resources, the principle remains the same. What you release in faith, God receives and multiplies. This law of divine multiplication is not man-made. It is spiritual. It is timeless. And it always works when activated with the right heart. The reason giving is so powerful is because it directly confronts the fear of lack. When you give, especially when it feels like you don't have much to spare, you are telling fear, "You don't rule me." You are telling your circumstances, "You are not my source." You are declaring to God, "I trust you above what I see." That is why giving is never just about the gift. It's about the faith behind it. It's about the alignment of your spirit with the nature of divine abundance. In the spiritual economy, giving is the gateway to receiving. Not because you are trying to manipulate God or purchase blessings, but because you are demonstrating a deep trust in His nature. God is generous. He is a giver. And when you mirror that nature, you become a vessel through which His provision flows. The more open your hands are, the more freely God can place blessings into them. But if your hands are clenched, gripping tightly to what you have, you are not in a position to receive the new things He wants to release. There is a divine law that says, "Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." This doesn't mean you give in order to get, but it does mean that giving initiates a spiritual chain reaction. The act of giving stirs the unseen. It creates space in your life for more. It signals to heaven that you are a conduit, not a container, that you can be trusted not only to receive blessings, but to release them to others. Too often, people withhold because they are waiting to have enough. They tell themselves, "I'll give when I have more. Once I'm financially secure, then I'll be generous." But that's not how spiritual principles work. The breakthrough doesn't come after you give. It comes because you give. The widow who gave her last meal didn't do it because she had abundance. She did it because she had, and her act of obedience became the catalyst for divine provision that sustained her beyond anything she could have imagined. Another powerful aspect of giving is that it removes the illusion of ownership. Everything we have, our money, our time, our abilities, ultimately belongs to God. We are stewards, not owners. When we hold tightly and claim possession over everything in our lives, we forget that it was God who provided it in the first place. But when we give, we're reminded that what flows through us is not ours to hoard, it is ours to steward. Giving teaches us to release control. It teaches us to let go of the false security that money often offers, and to anchor our trust in the one who provides the seed and the harvest. Giving also expands your capacity. The more you give, the more your spirit grows. Generosity stretches your faith. It enlarges your heart. It shifts your perspective from me to we. It lifts your eyes from your own needs and trains you to see the needs of others. And in that process, something beautiful happens. You begin to see the world through God's eyes. You start to understand that you are not here just to survive. You are here to bless, to serve, and to be part of a divine flow of provision and purpose. It's important to understand that giving must be done in the right spirit. It's not about guilt. It's not about impressing others. It's not about religious obligation. It's about joy, love, and faith. Scripture says that God loves a cheerful giver, not a pressured one. When you give joyfully, freely, and without expectation of return, you step into the purest form of spiritual alignment. You begin to give not just to meet needs, but because generosity has become your nature. And that kind of giving is powerful. It's transformative. It unlocks doors, shifts atmospheres, and brings supernatural breakthroughs. There are many forms of giving that carry divine impact. Sometimes it's financial support. Other times it's encouragement at the exact moment someone is about to give up. Sometimes it's your time, listening to someone, helping them, being present. And sometimes it's giving someone a second chance, extending grace, or offering forgiveness. These acts of giving are seeds too, and they often yield the most profound returns. Peace, restoration, healing. The spiritual principle is always the same. When you release something with a pure heart, God multiplies it. Giving also breaks the spirit of entitlement. It reminds you that everything you have is a gift. When you live in that awareness, gratitude flows. You stop taking things for granted. You stop complaining about what you lack, and you start thanking God for what you've been entrusted with. Gratitude and giving go hand in hand. They feed each other. A grateful heart gives freely, and a giving heart lives in constant gratitude. When you live a life of giving, you begin to see that you are never truly empty. Even when you feel like you have little, there is always something to give. A kind word, a prayer, a moment of your time. And every time you give, no matter how small, heaven takes notice. God sees not just what you give, but the faith and love with which you give it. And he responds, not out of obligation, but out of his nature, which is to bless, to multiply, and to increase those who trust in him. Giving is an act of surrender, but it is also an act of power. It declares to your fear that you are not a victim of circumstance,